This is Dan Jurgens, and if you want to have a good time, keep listening to the Krypton Report.
Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action. And you're listening to the Krypton Report.
Look up in the sky at the birds, the planes.
Happy Halloween, and this is coming to you a little late just because of some machinations of life, but sometimes that happens.
Oh yeah.
But we've been planning for this and we had it and we're like, we're not going to miss our opportunity. So, oh well. But I have with me my fellow enthusiast of the lover of monsters and literature, not Brian, as many would think. You would think it was Brian, but no, that gravely amusing man is off busy, and I actually called in my other pal of monsters, Mr. Brad.
How you doing?
What's up,
I wonder
Brad?
how you could tell I'm a fan of monsters. I wonder if there's any asides or anything like that. Yeah, I have to show this off to everyone.
Exactly. And Brad and I have bonded over monsters and our love of the classics.
Yep.
And, that's one of the big things like that Brian and I had bonded over too. And what's funny is the book we're talking about today, I actually bought for Brian last year for Christmas because we all know that Brian's a huge Frankenstein fan. And also because what's funny is what we'll be talking about today is called the Superman Monster. Now, there's an irony to this episode too. Our friends over at The Last Sons of Krypton actually just dropped this episode where they reviewed this book.
Nice.
And I had to send Connor a message and kind of chuckle because just because the whole thing was, I'm like, Brad and I have been preparing to do this, and what's funny is I did not know about this book until last year, and I found it after we had done our Halloween stuff. So I was on my I have to do it this year, and here we are. But the premise. Now I know that this book is a companion to a it's on the app. I want to say that for everybody because that's how I read it. It was on the app.
Same here.
They also did one with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yes, I actually just discovered that just a few minutes ago. It's called. This is a sequel to a Batman story called Batman Two Faces. I've never read it, so
I have not read it.
It has Two-Face in it, but the cover shows a Joker.
I heard it's supposed to be a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing. Kind of in the same vein of this, where this is Harry talking to Commissioner Gordon, the other is Commissioner Gordon talking to Perry. So that is one that I will be reading probably with next year. But it was a Elseworlds tale back when the books were actually labeled Elseworlds, and it's an easy read. But it's a retelling of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein through the lens of the Superman characters.
Yep.
Now, my first question for Brad is, have you read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein?
Okay, I know bits and pieces of it. There's actually a specific version I want to read where it has a really cool cover. And I think, who's the guy who created Swamp Thing? Lane Wayne?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe he did the cover art. I know he did actually interior art of an actual illustrated book version of it one day. But I haven't actually read the book itself. I know how it ends. I have watched a number of adaptations from the original black and white starring Boris Karloff to the likes of Kenneth Branagh's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And of course the Hammer films, because come on, Hammer's great.
Yeah, I mean, I have a love-hate with Hammer films, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Save that discussion for next year.
Yeah. So yeah, but I read it read it in high school.
Mhm.
And then I reread it a couple of years ago. Brian bought me a cool copy for Christmas of Dracula and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And I did kind of a mix between audiobook and actual reading. And I always say that there's two kind of versions of the Frankenstein story. Is you have Mary Shelley's, which is the book, the source, but then you have what Universal did, which is what most people think of.
Yep.
And not to go on too many tangents here, but if you have followed along with any of my discussions with Brian over at Gravely Amusing, you know that we've had a lot of discussions how there are the classic monsters of literature and their versions, but then there's specific traits to the Universal line.
Oh yeah.
Universal has their own stake in Frankenstein, and the imagery that goes behind that. So it's very interesting because my shirt is a representation of the Universal style of the Frankenstein monster, and it's the one that most people think of. When the book Mary Shelley takes a little bit of a different journey. Now,
Like how the monsters created, for example.
I do like the Kenneth Branagh film, except I don't like Robert De Niro as the creature.
Yeah, that's weird casting. Like, I gotta admit, I was like, really? Out of all the people you get, I mean, he's good. It's just you wouldn't see him as the monster.
Yeah, and but we're gonna get into this book because I read it last year, like I said, and I loved it. And but of course,
I read it a half hour ago.
And I mean, who's your favorite Frankenstein or favorite version of the story?
I mean, I could be basic and just say the original Universal monster movie one, but I also really, really like Kenneth Branagh's version as well. Plus, of course, the Hammer one. I'm just gonna say basic for now and just say the Boris Karloff version, but then like very, very, very close second place would be both the original Hammer one, and the Kenneth Branagh film.
See, I'm going to say I love the Karloff because I love the Universals just period. But I really like, and this is kind of a cheat, what they did with the creature in Penny Dreadful.
I've been meaning to watch that show. I've only watched the first episode, and it's like, hey, this is a show for me. Still haven't gotten to it. It's on my list of many other shows to watch.
I will say that it's really good. The season 3, I'll hold off my thoughts, but season 3 is not bad, but I just feel like it kind of gets to the end and you're like, huh. And whenever you finish it, we'll talk about it.
Well, let me ask you this then, since I see how you pause it and everything. Would you say the ending is as bad as Game of Thrones ending, or no, not at all?
I'd say that the ending's a little bit better, but it's in a similar vein where you're kind of like, huh. But I would say that the ending's better than Game of Thrones.
Okay, that's good enough.
But but you'll just be like, okay, because you're like, I like this, but there could have been something. And like I said, we'll talk about it when you get there. But that's I really like what they did there, and I feel like I've said this before, like I'm really excited because I wanted to do this because as some people know, like I do my requel pitch, where I pitch like movie ideas over on my personal YouTube. And
good plug there.
Oh yeah, of course. And it's like I make ideas based on existing properties, and I did one for Frankenstein, and it's not going to come out till next year. But my thing is, we have 2 different versions of the Frankenstein-based story coming to film next year.
Really?
We have the one called The Bride, directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, and then we have Guillermo del Toro's version coming out next year.
So is the Maggie one, is that the one that's supposed to be part of this new Dark Universe? Or
no, just their own things. Yeah. So I'm very...
So it's not Universal.
No. And it's just, I'm like, okay, I feel like if we did this next year, it would be like part of it. But we had both done the research, and I didn't want to hold off another year to do this.
Oh, yeah.
But the monsters are always on my mind this time of year. From September to October, It's monster time. But I just feel like and I bring it up because I feel like there's no perfect adaptation of this story.
Oh yeah, it's the same way with like Dracula. Dracula, I'm told, is like very hard to adapt. Perfectly.
I've thrown out my pitches. They're on there. You can hear them about. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to make Dracula too much of the protagonist, and he just needs to be in the back as an antagonist, except in certain parts. And I think a miniseries is the way to go.
Which they've done a couple of. I know BBC has done it at least a few times.
Yeah, but the problem is they always want to put their own spin on it and change it. Nobody wants to try to actually adapt the source material and just make.
You know why they do that too, right?
Cheats.
Well, no. It's something I heard when Guillermo del Toro was pitching Hellboy. Like one studio exec was like, "Hey, could you have like Hellboy just be like a normal human and then turn into Hellboy when he's angry?" Because he's like, that change right there, that's me. I learned of that recently too.
Yeah, because
That's
then they
not
can
my
put
way.
their, they can put. I guess they can own some sort of like right to the story or something like, because it's changed. Look into that, but I don't know. But let's get into this because last question.
Sure.
This could be a trick question. Is Frankenstein the creature or the doctor?
Okay, fun fact. So, funny how you mention that. So, when I'm at one of my jobs, right, hanging out with the kids and everything, one keeps on calling me, "He's the Frankenstein. He's the Frankenstein." I'm like, "No, I'm the Frankenstein monster. Get it right."
See, I say it's a cheat because Frankenstein is the doctor's last name, and he always calls it his creation or his son, and there's this bond. So
does he actually say he's the son in the book, or just like
it's kind of like it's referenced, as father and creature and stuff like that. And so in that context, the monster itself could be Frankenstein because it would adopt its creator's name. Gotcha. So
also one other thing I want to say too before we get to the book. There's actually one adaptation of Frankenstein I really want to watch. It was a made-for-TV movie one that premiered just before the Kenneth Branagh film, and it has one of the Quaids in there. I don't know what it's called. It's like same year. It looks really good. James Rolfe of Cinemassacre talked about it. Really makes me want to watch it. But also, it's funny how we're talking about Frankenstein's monster in comics, and just in 1 month's time, Creature Commandos.
I know, and that's another thing is we'll have Creature Commandos, which Creature Commandos in itself looks like a mixture between Creature Commandos comic and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like in the New 52, they did the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I read a few of those issues.
And yeah, that's kind of what the current Creature Commandos are kind of looking like to me. But all right,
you got Spider-Man right behind you.
Do I? Yeah.
But Tyler, before we do that, one more question for you.
Sure.
What is your favorite adaptation of Frankenstein? Not just movies, but also shows, comics, miniseries, whichever.
That is a really good. Man, are you talking the character or just overall?
The story in general, we'll say. Whether it be updated or what have you.
Man, I think it comes down to just kind of being either the Karloff or the Kenneth Branagh.
Gotcha. For me, we already know the film one, but I really like Marvel's take on Frankenstein. I've read a bunch of the issues of the original Marvel Frankenstein run on it. It's great. It's a lot of fun.
Interesting. Okay.
Like it? Superman.
I
think you're right.
I'm looking for that movie because now you have me curious.
Type up Cinemassacre, James Rolfe. That's Rolfe Frankenstein up. I think I want to say like 97 was like the year 97, 94. You'll find it, and it looks really cool and interesting.
But let's get into this book. That's what people are here for.
Oh yeah.
As we talk, because I feel like you can't really, talk about it without,
Going on many tangents about
like it's one of those stories that's been adapted so many times.
Yep.
And it goes on and on that you get tired of seeing like, oh, another one, but just like Dracula, we're still waiting for the perfect version.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you can start here. What did you think about this story overall?
It was a lot of fun. For one, I like it. Dan Abnett, however you say his name, wrote it. I'm a fan of his. I haven't really read his Guardians of the Galaxy stuff just yet, even though that's his most like famous run. But the story itself was a lot of fun. I like that it was Perry White who was telling the story, as well as to Commissioner Gordon. And I like how when he told the story, it was like a ghost story, similar to how it was in Bride of Frankenstein. With, Mary Shelley telling her recounts of the events as well as, the film itself. Plus, it's very fitting that Perry White, of all people, talk about a good scoop.
So, as you were saying, it's Perry. The prologue opens with Perry White and Commissioner Gordon sitting in a club, and it's set in the past. And he begins telling the story of this man. His name was what?
Dude's name.
Victor Luther.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
He's
Which
like,
was appropriate. You made Lex like, the Victor Frankenstein character, because they're both mad scientists, especially during the Silver Age.
And that's what I think is interesting is the fact that it makes complete sense right from the beginning that it's Victor, or that Victor's Lex. And basically he's married, he's engaged to I'm trying to find the names.
Elois. It's like Elois. I don't know if
Eloise. It's Eloise.
Eloise.
It's how you'd pronounce, but it's Eloise, but it's basically Lois Lane.
Oh yeah, Morgan Edge's daughter, of all things.
Yeah.
Man.
And he's in love with her supposedly, but the
Which
father
I was shocked by, because I was like, I thought Lex would be more in love with his work. This is different.
But the father will not approve of the dowry.
Yeah.
And this is like, Victor being in love and, away from his cousin. Was his cousin, times were different people.
Yeah, that's right. Because, wasn't his, original bride supposed to be named, Elizabeth, I think, right?
Yep. That's why it's like I said, like Eloise. So my computer's just being a pain in the butt.
Oh, really? I don't know a single thing about that, with me being a half hour late because my computer.
So, but basically Victor, Luther is angry and goes outside and finds a rocket crash that he opens, and it's very much the same kind of rocket ship that we saw in Man of Steel, the John Byrne miniseries. And he opens it, and it's a skeleton inside, like a baby skeleton.
What did you think of that, by the way?
I thought that was kind of shocking and interesting because I didn't know where they were going exactly with the story. I mean, I had an idea that it's a Frankenstein thing, but I'm like, the same time, I'm kind of like, where are we going? Well, you know?
Yeah, this is a nitpick, but I don't like that part. It's mainly because like I had the same problem with Amalgam Comics Super Soldier character, who's like a combination of Captain America and Superman. I don't like where like Baby Kal-El comes to Earth, he's dead, he's either a corpse or a skeleton, and they just use the technology or his DNA to make the character.
Okay. I got you. Jarrell's message, opens up, and basically Victor uses Jarrell as like his teacher when he takes it back and he makes the chamber into more of a resurrection chamber.
Oh,
He
yeah.
hires his gravedigger, and I thought this was one of the best parts. Is he hires this gravedigger robber, and he's like, "I won't tell anyone. Business is business. Business is like business." And he pulls a gun, and he's like, "I know you won't." And he shoots him right in the head.
Did you catch the nod of the character he's supposed to be a reference to?
nothing.
Resurrection Man.
Oh, okay.
They call him, "You're a Resurrection Man."
Oh, okay.
Exactly that.
All right. But of course, he basically brings life with electricity and everything to, he says it lives, and basically builds with the DNA of that matrix chamber. And I'd say the baby was that was in there, because it's a full grown monster Superman that emerges, and he's in the black and suit with a big silver shield.
Yeah, which I love that they use the black suit from The Return of Superman. And I also really like how for the thing that conducts the electricity, instead of like the neck bolts, it's Superman S. I really like that. I thought that was really cool.
I think every choice in this I like. There's nothing I walked away from this going, man, I wish I would have done this.
What do you think of Superman's face?
Well, I like that it's
Scarred up.
it's scarred, it's damaged, it's the skin, because we don't exactly go into too much about how he assembled
Yeah,
the body.
Which is, in true fashion to the original Mary Shelley novel, because I know the creation of the monster in the novel is like very vague. It's never really explained how he created him.
I always thought it'd be interesting to. I always thought it'd be interesting to do a story where the doctor. There's physical differences in the limbs of the monster.
Oh yeah.
It may be like part of his skin came from different ethnicities, and like one arm might be slightly longer, or like hands are bigger and thick, because you're building from different parts, like you're taking the best parts and stuff. And
yeah, or like with Robert De Niro's monster, his eyes are different colors.
Yeah, and I thought that was a good choice, because I think too often it just looks like one person scarred up.
One thing I like about the Superman monster design is the head, in addition to the scars and everything, it actually reminds me of Bizarro. And I know and there's a Silver Age Superman comic in which Bizarro meets Frankenstein's monster. It's an actor playing him. It's not really, Boris Karloff or anything like that, but it's just like an actor who meets Bizarro, who's playing Frankenstein. It's a monster.
I think the design does reference, Bizarro, because Bizarro is kind of like a creation in a way of like, kind of a mad scientist creation. But
oh yeah,
Victor is freaked out with his creation and sets his lab on fire, and the creature flies him to safety. But of course, Victor rejects it, and we see him
that too, because like the monster is kind. It's like, rawr, I gotta destroy everything. I hate life and stuff. It's like, I love that how this story blends the various like mythology parts of Superman, and it still, in a way, keeps it true to the character.
It keeps it true to both the character of the Frankenstein monster and Superman, as he's not evil, he's not vicious, he's not angry like we see, or a killer. Because we see a horse-drawn carriage that he's in the city hiding, we see a horse-drawn carriage. Basically, the person passes out, and he leaps in. And we have a great reference to Action Comics
Yes, I
number one
love
of him
that.
with the horse-drawn carriage
Yeah,
above his head,
I love that. Absolutely love that. I love
and
Action
people
Comics.
running away. And you know, you know,
And with the monster's creation, let me ask you this, Tyler. Did it remind you of any other specific adaptations of the Mary Shelley novel?
they all start to. I was gonna say it's been like 2 years since I did my big kind of Frankenstein. Where we did a bunch of Frankenstein stuff.
To quote the Wolfman, God help you.
Yeah, it all blends together after a while, except for like the ones I rewatch constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the Universal ones I always kind of watch, but the other versions I did some watching, but it kind of just, like I said, after a while it just blends together.
Yeah, for me, it reminded me definitely of the Hammer horror films. Like,
Yeah,
the way he was like in a glass coffin or whatever you want to call it, wrapped up in bandages and everything. Like, this reminds me a lot of the Hammer horror films, which I really love.
and even like the more pale white type
Just like
skin.
Christopher Lee's.
But the people, of course, start yelling monster and freak, and they throw rocks and stuff at him, vegetables, and he starts running. And he runs and finds the Kant family as they are grieving over their recently deceased son. And they're an old farm couple, and he hides in their barn, as he would, why? Which this part even reminds me of the novel. And like, I will say this, I think to get the full Frankenstein effect, if you watch, like, I have an edit that I watch every year where I edited Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein into one film.
Ooh, that sounds cool.
I basically took out the introduction to Frankenstein, even though I love it, and I have it kind of fade in, and then you go through Frankenstein, and then I cut out the beginning of Bride with the Mary Shelley part, and I put in so it lines up almost seamlessly just the windmills, so you go from one into the next film.
I would love to see this edit.
And then the only thing else I cut out is I cut out the people in the jars by Dr. Pretorius. So I felt like that was just too bizarre and out there and didn't make any sense. I felt like it just really made the movie almost feel laughable. And so I always watch them in that one viewing. And, I feel like if you do that, you get more of the story, because this, even with the family here, is like the old man in the woods that friends the creature. Because what we see is why Mr. Kant is out, a bear attacks, and the Superman creature appears and saves him.
And he pulls the Incredible Hulk and he just hurls it up in the distance, just like in the show.
Yeah, he just and it says the Kants didn't hesitate or question their good fortune. They repaid the visitor with every kindness they could manage. Hot food, kind words, a bed near the fire, and began educating him and realizing his intelligence. In return, the guest assisted with the chores on the farm and everything. Listening to their chatter, their happiness, they named him Klaus after their son.
And it basically plays out the way it traditionally plays out. Even the more tragic parts near the end.
And basically, he's walking and he's helping with the farm. He moves a rock and somebody sees him. And at that night, Klaus is talking about wanting to meet his creator again. And people show up shooting the house, yelling monster. And there's Victor with his cane that actually has a kryptonite top on the cane.
I love that, because that reminded me of how it was with Byrne's run, the post-crisis run of Superman, where like Lex had kryptonite as a performer jewelry, a ring.
Yeah. And of course, Mr. Johann Kant goes out and has a heart attack, and we see that Klaus calls him father, and it's there that the monster comes out, and Victor is initially scared, but then starts beating him because he has the kryptonite cane. The Kant's house is on fire, and the monster goes back in to save who he dubs as his mother.
Which we never see what happens to her. I noticed when I reread it.
I was gonna say it is still Martha Kant.
Yeah. In my head canon, he saved her.
I would say that she died in the fire.
Yeah, probably.
Because I feel like that's part of like the tragedy story because of the anger that because he comes into the next part is he flies in his full Superman suit into the wedding of Luther and Eloise. And it's in Luther's anger that he pulls a gun and starts shooting. And we meet, Victor's best man, Jimmy. Somehow poor Jimmy gets sucked into being his friend. But the bullets, of course, bounce off and hit Eloise.
Which reminds me of how Victor's wife in the first Hammer horror Frankenstein movie, how she died. Because she, too, died accidentally by Victor shooting her.
I cannot remember how she died in the book.
So from what I remember, just going off of the various adaptations I've seen, the monster kills her on the wedding night.
See, that's what he punches through her chest, doesn't he? In the Branagh film.
Yeah.
But see, Klaus is horrified when he sees what's happened, and Victor starts beating him with the cane. And Jimmy later finds Eloise's father dead in his bedroom and goes to find Victor, where he finds Victor basically redoing his experiment now with Eloise, and he shoots.
Also, Eloise's dad is dead. It's implied that Luther smothered him.
Yeah, his not father-in-law, because they didn't actually finish getting married. And Victor shoots Jimmy, and he falls down into the basement where the Superman monster is being held by a necklace of kryptonite.
A homage to the first Christopher Reeve movie.
And then Eloise awakens, scared, screaming, and she says, "Victor, you made me a monster." Now, this one's interesting because if you think about it, this isn't, from what we gather in the story, she's not, built like the other one. She's just resurrected.
Yeah, she's freshly resurrected too.
Yeah, so she's, her skin comes out much similar. What's interesting is in the way they draw it is we see her in one panel with her skin like it, scarred up, kind of melty looking.
Yeah.
And then the next one, like we saw her before as normal.
Which
and
makes
then we
me wonder, is this like is this to make her see herself in the mirror? Like a psychological thing?
Right. And it also makes me wonder, like we were talking earlier about how we were kind of like the skin because we don't know how he was created. But from her, it's just her being resurrected.
Also, it's a nice reference to the Kenneth Branagh film, because the same thing happened where he resurrected his deceased wife through the same process he created his monster, except in this version he didn't chop off her head and put on a different body.
Yeah. And she comes up and Superman says, Luther, you animal, I will. And he says, you live. And she says, help me, I don't know what I am. And he says, Klaus says, the pain will pass, trust me, you will be whole again. She says, I do trust you. And then Luther's like, get away from her. And they just push him back. And he says, let me save you again. She says, yes. And then they kiss in fire and they fly out, which I thought was really interesting. That right there, I was kind of like, the kiss maybe it was a little much, but I don't know. It's like,
not only that, if you think about it, it's like they never really had an interaction with each other before. I thought when I reread it, like the carriage scene was with Lois, like maybe that was Lois.
That's what I thought too. And then
But
like
not.
she had blonde hair. Like it was weird.
Like, I mean, it could be Lana, could be, but she's more
Because I thought they referenced that it was her, but then I was like, it's not drawn like her, so I was confused myself.
They just magically fall in love with each other.
I mean, it is magic. And then we're back to Gordon and Perry kind of wrapping up, and he brings about how he knows the story. And we kind of go back to much like the book, where it's a ship in the ice, and they find Luther, who's crazed, and he basically was telling the ship's captain the story, and he dies. And then Superman appears to him.
Fully healed. His face is fully healed, by the way, too.
I'm so surprised there wasn't a shot of like him like flying up into the sun in this, like when he took Lois and just went up into the sky and they passed over the sun. And
that would actually be like a nice homage to how the ending of Bride of Frankenstein, where like the monster's like, we both deserve to be dead, and like,
but it's like the opposite kind of like. But he appears. He said he's healed. He's shiny. And he says, I've come from my creator. He said nothing else, and he took the body and was gone. And then...
Also, he referenced the Fortress of Solitude, too, in one of those lines.
Oh, yeah. And then you have Gordon says, glory be. Out there, Superman and his mate. And Perry's like, who... Oh, yeah, I can't read it this far. Who can say, not I? And he says, well, I can't top that story. Pleasure as always, Commissioner Gordon. As always, Mr. White, and all too infrequent. Till we meet again, the end. Like I said, it's a short read.
Oh, yeah, only
50 pages. So it's like 2 books, technically.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a good read, and I feel like it's very true. And, coming around with like this idea of Superman being like the monster Frankenstein, I think is ingenious.
Yeah.
It's not one you would think of, but when you put
think
it
more like Cyborg than anything else.
Yeah, when you put it in the context of the actual Mary Shelley's novel, it starts to make more sense.
Yeah. And one thing I forgot to mention is in the beginning when I'm just going to say Lex because it's easier for me. When Lex was talking to the science counselor, like, oh, your experiments are too, heathenistic and stuff. I like it that Professor Hamilton was a part of that council.
Yeah, there's a lot more. I notice each time I read it, a lot more stuff that gets dropped.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I like it so much. It's like it's such a cool blending of not just only like the super mythology, but like various moments of the DC mythology too. And I like the cool like little mention of Batman at the end, which at first I didn't realize. Oh, this is a sequel.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like you don't notice it, and then, but yeah.
So let me ask you this, Tyler.
Mm-hmm.
So this story led to a cool idea, right? Now, if like DC were to continue this idea, like making their various heroes or villains as homages to the classic Universal monsters, which ones would you like to see? We already got Superman as Frankenstein's monster. We had Batman as Dracula. Which others would you like to see?
Man, my question is Aquaman as a creature from the Black Lagoon too on the nose?
I don't think so, because I like that idea, because I know we talked about this before too. It works, in my opinion. It works.
Okay. My question is, okay, so there is a book yet I haven't read. It's called Batman, where it's a new one where he's hunting a werewolf called like Howl at the Moon or something. Ooh, it's not on the app yet. The first issue, it's a Black Label book. It just came out, so it'll be on the app next month or November. But I'm trying to think of
who would be the Wolfman analog.
Yeah,
I actually thought of that. I got a perfect answer. You could eventually have him turn into a werewolf, but Beast Boy.
I mean, Beast Boy, yeah. I mean,
yeah, you could just have him like where like he's going through various phases of the moon, and each phase of the moon, he gets like a different animal transformation. And when it's a full moon, he turns into a wolf.
I mean, it would work. It could work. I'd almost, but see, in one way, if I went classic Universal, I'd almost want it to be Green Lantern, but I don't know how I would do the story in the sense yet, because I see Hal Jordan be very similar to that Larry Talbot. Like smooth, trying to take on the ladies and everything.
Okay, yeah, I can see that then.
You know, but like with this, it's like it's based on, you know, literature. So it's like if we were to do literature, would we do a Phantom of the Opera? Would we do a Hunchback? So
Well, let me ask you this: who would be your pick for the Mummy?
See.
For me, I picked Black Adam because, you know, he's Egyptian related. There's stuff with the gods there. Might be a little bit too on the nose, maybe not.
I mean, I don't know. These are good things to think about. I feel like Superman works so well.
Shockingly enough.
You know, and I try to, like I said, I try to think of like, you know, or early horror all stem from literature. So it's like, what else could we pull from? But I don't know. But this was a good read, and kind of a good through. I always reserve September as like my monster month, and then October is more about Halloween. And I've often said this, that Halloween is in horror crossover, but they're not one and the same.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, like there's
Hocus Pocus, for example.
But I'm just saying, like, a lot of people just think anything horror related can be used for Halloween, but Halloween in itself is its own traditions as a holiday that doesn't have to do with horror in general. It's a very interesting holiday that I think often gets, like, I don't look at like 80s slashers other than Halloween because they set it on the holiday as having any relation. Like, oh, I don't watch those for like Halloween time. Like, just because it's a scary movie to me doesn't mean that it belongs in Halloween time. So.
Yeah, like Brightburn, it's a Superman horror story, but not necessarily works for Halloween. Good movie, by the way.
It is. James and I will be doing a crossover kind of episode for his horror report. We will be doing Brightburn this month.
Nice. And since you shared the link with me and everything, yes, the link you sent me, that is in fact the Frankenstein movie I was talking about earlier, the made-for-TV one.
Yeah, cool. All right. Any final thoughts, Brad?
Not gonna really think of any. I'm trying to think of it. I love this idea though, mixing like classic horror characters with DC superheroes. I wish they could do it more often. I wish we could think of more creative ideas than what we got so far.
My thing is, I'm tired, and I think my brain's going to just start working on it, and we'll probably rendezvous with this next year.
Oh yeah.
So we'll come up with the list. We'll just have to create like a thread and keep all of our ideas.
Oh yeah. Like, who would be the Brides of Dracula? Would it be for like Batman, for example? Would it be Talia al Ghul? Would it be Vicky Vale, Catwoman, Wonder Woman?
I wouldn't do Wonder Woman because I'm trying to think where I would put her. But the Brides of Dracula, because my question is, would you make Batman Dracula or would you make Batman Van Helsing?
Ooh, that's a good
because see, I think that would be interesting. Make Batman Van Helsing, and then like Quincy Morris and everything, like Dick Grayson. You make Lucy Barbara. Who's the other? Dr. Seward could be like Jason. No, Dr. Seward would be like Tim Drake. Trying to think. Renfield, maybe. I'm thinking. Because it depends on who we depict as Dracula.
I want to say Joker, but I feel like that's too on the nose.
I know that was my first thought too. Was like, But it could be good though, because you could make it unique though. You could make a unique Joker, like a vampire Joker type thing.
Yeah, actually, no, because you could just simply say it's Joker's human form, regular human form, and then once Dracula influences him stuff, he goes crazy, just like Renfield does. And I'm thinking more like the Bela Lugosi version, but
yeah. Or would Joker himself be a good Renfield?
And funny how you mentioned Batman as Van Helsing, because like lightning just struck my head. Remember the 2000s Universal Van Helsing film?
Yes.
Imagine that, where because Batman always has a plan to take down certain heroes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that with the various monster heroes.
Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking, I think that would be probably my pitch. Is you do Batman and Dracula, but Batman's the Van Helsing, because you have so many characters in the Batman world to pull from.
Yeah.
Like you said, to be the brides, who would be Mina? That would be maybe Catwoman. Make Selena Mina.
Well, the thing about Mina is
and then who would be Harker?
Because with Mina, I'm trying to think of that too. If it's Catwoman, then that means there'd be a relation to Van Helsing, then because Catwoman and Batman go romantically.
Yeah. So all right, so we make Barbara Mina.
Mm-hmm.
Dick is Harker. You make Jason, Tim, Quincy, and Dr. Seward. And yeah.
Now, hopefully someone from DC doesn't see this and steal our ideas.
Well, if
we're coming to court then, DC.
Yeah.
We love you.
We'll lose that. But I'm trying to think. I'm trying to figure out who I would actually really want. I don't know. I mean, you could almost make Harley Quinn Renfield. You think about it, because
you have the Joker as Dracula, have Harley as Renfield,
and then when they're bitten, it's kind of like the Joker venom, Joker gas.
And it's like all the smiles and everything. Someone's gonna poach this idea from us now.
Yeah, probably. Let's see. And then the brides, I think Talia will be one. Poison Ivy.
Well, do a Gotham Sirens type deal?
Who would be the third one? Because could be easy to say Catwoman, but one thing I always loved, and I liked this in Van Helsing, was Dracula brides being each one different hair color because they're different ethnicities.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I'm just going off though the Ford Coppola film though, which I never really.
I don't either. We talked about this. That's why Jeannie and I did a commentary track for it as we were drunk, which I never drink, so at all. But we cracked open a bottle of wine or whatever. But even then, they tried to give them characteristics. But the one thing I liked in Van Helsing was giving them the distinctive different hair colors. So if we did Talia, Poison Ivy, and then who's a Batman villainess who's blonde?
We could do Harley, but then that's the problem of
Harley's gonna be
yeah, that's the problem. Was Vicky Vale ever a blonde? Oh wait, no, she's not really a villain though.
But I mean,
wait, what's the name of that character from the New 52? The White Rabbit?
I mean, you could do something like Magpie, I guess.
Magpie. There we go. That's way better.
Yeah. Hey, we're workshopping this.
Give us credit, DC.
And then Batman's Van Helsing, and he has his manservant with him because why not? Alfred, of course. Is there any major characters we're not thinking of from the book?
What about Commissioner Gordon?
That's what I'm trying to think, because I feel like he would almost be a Dr. Seward type, but in the movies, Dr. Seward's always portrayed older.
God, this is. I'm loving this idea.
We need a new Lucy.
We need an idea for a pitch video now.
We need a new idea for Lucy.
Let's go. Did I lose you? No.
Stephanie Brown.
Yeah, she was Batgirl, right?
Yeah, and there was one more.
That's what I was trying to think of.
There was one more suitor. I there's Quincy, Dr. Sue. There was one more, and I always forget the third suitor's name.
Make it Harvey Dent, just because.
Could you? But I was just trying to think who else is like. Yeah, because you have. Yeah,
Speaking of
I'm
which,
working it.
with Batman Two Faces, since you said, did you read that one or no?
No, I'm going to.
Okay, because like I'm wondering, like, will Harvey be the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde analog, or will it be Joker?
I don't know. I'm gonna go look it up. But you said it's on the app, right?
It might be.
Okay.
I'm not making promises. I found it on Wikipedia. I was like, oh, I'll check out the
All
Superman.
right. I need to look it up. But hey, we're gonna end here. Brad and I are going to send you our thoughts because I think, yeah, we just got to try to find where we could put Commissioner Gordon.
And two other things I want to say to you real fast. Van Helsing, the 2000 film, very underrated film. Highly recommend.
I have a love-hate relationship with that movie. I like a lot of it, but then I don't like that real quick, I don't like the plot with Dracula's dead unborn children. They waste Dr. Frankenstein. I don't like the idea that if it's supposed to be the Van Helsing, but I would prefer it's like his ancestor that leads to Abraham, then why is he fighting Dracula now instead of just fighting a vampire?
I like it that he's like Michael from Angel of Mythology.
Yeah, see, I don't like that he's an angel. I like the idea he's just a person who fights instead of being like this whole like background where maybe he's a fallen angel. That just gets convoluted. And I don't like the way they do the werewolf because once again, this is a big pet peeve of mine. There are werewolves
And Wolfman.
and then there's the Wolfman. And the Wolfman's different set of characteristics and style. And it's a very universally owned property.
Yeah.
And in this, they call it the Wolfman, but they go back to more of a standard werewolf when, once again, Van Helsing was being produced by Universal and they didn't use any of their Universal iconography. Like they didn't make their
neck molds?
But they're like the Frankenstein though, like they did, but he's blue and he's got that like electric heart and that stiff leg. I would have made him look a little bit more like Karloff just because that's what they're known for. Dracula's a completely different style of Dracula.
It's Michael Shannon. He'd be perfect for the monster. He looks a lot like Karloff.
I could see that. But that's kind of my big points with Van Helsing, especially with the Wolfman. They do it completely different, and you're supposed to be basing this off the Universal line, and they could have done something, and I won't comment on because I don't want to spoil anything for you in the future, but enjoy.
And speaking of Wolfman too, yourself in that reboot doesn't suck. I'm a little worried because it comes out in January. The second trailer was good though.
It's just Wolfman, and I feel like it's not going to be the Wolfman type thing. It's going to be very much its own thing,
and hopefully that design's a lot better than the joke where I said where it's basically the Wolfman from the 2010 film after he went through a really bad Hollywood downfall.
And I think in some ways this new movie is going to retroactively like people like. I like the 2010 movie. My biggest complaints are ready. One, I wish they would have made the love story not really a thing unless they made that Gwen was a childhood friend of both brothers and she loved Larry, but then he left. So over time she fell for his brother. Because in the original Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr., they were twins. The brothers were. Second, I feel like it was a little too gory at times. It didn't need to be. One of my biggest things is I don't think the wolf should have been his dad. It should have been a little bit more of a mystery. It should have been the mom. And the big thing was that the mom had been still alive. And the reason why he was sent away is because he saw his mom he thought die. But she's still alive. And the dad keeps her there. And the whole town thinks she's dead. And she's the wolf that got out and killed the brother. And that's the big battle at the end is the mom versus Larry.
Now you're making me want to rewatch the movie because I only saw it once, and that was like when it hit DVD.
Oh, dude, I watch it every year. I watch both of them. I watch one on the full moon in September and one on the full moon in October.
Oh, I love that.
But
and in case anyone doesn't know, me and Tyler, our favorite monster is the Wolfman.
Yep. So, but all right, everybody, check it out. Thanks, Brad, for being here.
Thank you for having me as always.
You're welcome.
Representing other monsters.
And hold on. Yeah, I'm about to say you got the shirt that has all of them. So
Yeah, a fun fact too. I found this shirt my last day at Universal Studios. I was looking forever to find this thing. It wasn't until like 5 minutes before we leave. I'm at this one random shop. I find it. I'm like, I'm so happy. And it glows in the dark. I didn't know that until like after I bought it.
and we'll talk more later in the future because hopefully we'll learn more about the dark universe that's coming to Universal Studios. Because that's very exciting. We're waiting on more, and it's supposed to open sometime next year. I'd love to go next year.
Oh yeah, that's
But
my plan for next year.
But I don't know if I'm gonna. I want to go in October, but I want to make sure my kids are old enough to really ride the rides and enjoy them all. So I might have to wait one more year.
Oh, I see. Because they might be too small or a little scared.
Well, they're tall enough. I just want them to like enjoy it and be able to ride the most stuff before I pay all that money. So,
yeah.
But that's my thought. More from us in our monster talk next year.
Look up in the sky!
Thank you for joining us today on the Krypton Report. We ask you check out our social media. We have a YouTube where we do YouTube specials. You can check out our dollar Patreon, like we talked about, where we do specials. Check the QR code here. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow us on X and all other social media.
Look up in the sky!
We want to thank you for checking out the Krypton Report podcast, and we ask you to check us out on all of our social media, on Twitter X, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Hive, Threads, YouTube. We're everywhere. And if you want to be a guest on the podcast, just send us a message and let us know.
If you are like Tyler and James and can't get enough super talk, check out these other podcasts. Digging for Kryptonite, Supergirl Radio, The Last Sons of Krypton, The Superboy Legacy Podcast, All-Star Superfans, Superman the Animated Podcast, The Aspiring Kryptonians, Always Hold On to Smallville, The Geek of Steel, and Truth, Justice, and Hope.
Tyler here. Hope you're enjoying the podcast today. I just want to talk about another project I've really been working on. It's the Requel. It used to be just part of our Patreon, and we still do Patreon exclusives, but I've really pumped it up, and I've started inviting friends to join me as we pitch movie ideas. I ask everyone if they can go and check it out. It's under Jonathan Tyler Patrick on my YouTube, and go like it, subscribe, and if you want to come on and pitch an idea, come on. Just check it out. It's a fun time.
I am Brian Peters, the creator and host of Gravely Amusing. For the past 30 years, I've studied the history of gods and monsters in pop culture and our world. As a student of theology and history, I've tried to understand evil and its impact on us. As a writer, I've tried to share this knowledge. As a comedian, I've tried to make people laugh as I do it. But as a man-child, I'm still that scared 7-year-old boy. Join me as I share the history of horror and sci-fi, discuss classic and modern pop culture, and share a creepy story or two. This podcast may scare you, it may horrify you, or it may leave you gravely amused. Listen to Gravely Amusing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever podcasts are found. Follow us on Twitter at gravely_amusing or on TikTok at Gravely Amusing.
We have a $1 Patreon. Yes, I know everyone asks for money, but our $1 Patreon each month gets you commentary tracks for releasing movies, DC movies. It gets you my Requel series where I pitch ideas about movie sequels, prequels, or whatever. It also gets special bonus episodes. So check that out for $1 a month. That's all we ask. Keep it cheap, keep it simple, and help us keep going. Check out the link in the show notes or Patreon Krypton Report.
This is Dan Jurgens, and if you want to have a good time, keep listening to the Krypton Report.